Let's think back to when we were kids. What did you want to be when you grew up? When I grew up, I had a couple things I wanted to be, but the first thing I wanted to be really bad was a cocktail waitress. Yes, the cocktail waitress. For me, it was all about their glam. It looked like they were dressed up and ready to go to a party. I don't really know what I got that fascination from, but I really wanted to be a cocktail waitress. So I worked hard in college, and I got to live the dream. I'll tell you, it wasn't as glamorous as I thought it would be, and it wasn't as easy either, but I got to live that dream. The other thing I wanted to be when I grew up was a supermodel. Now, even if you're way far back there, you may be thinking, isn't she a little bit on the short side of tall? You're right. I'm only 5 foot tall, but at 5th grade, 5 foot tall was the tallest girl in our school. I was almost monstrous. Unfortunately, I wouldn't grow even a quarter inch past 5th grade, and this would be it. So it had been a long time since I'd thought about being in front of a camera or wanting to be in front of a camera when I found out I was going to be a movie star. Let me tell you about that night I found out about my starring role. It was a Friday evening in December around 7 p.m. I'd been visiting my family for a couple days, and I was just getting home. I had barely made it inside the door when my boyfriend started asking me about a text message I'd apparently received from Jay. Before I could respond, in a snooty voice, he said, "Who's Jay?" A flash of heat ran through my body, like a bolt of lightning. My mind was racing 1,000 times faster than normal, searching for any sort of reply. I knew he was getting impatient, and he started repeating over and over, "I saw you. I saw you." I'm not usually one at a loss for words, but at that moment, I stood there, paralyzed. The only thing I could hear was the voice inside my head screaming, "Run! Run!" But I couldn't move. I was frozen like a statue, paralyzed by fear I'd never experienced before. Now he was getting impatient and he was getting angry, and I knew my time was running out with him. The pressure had built up inside me, and like a tea kettle on the stove, out spurted the words, "I don't know what you're talking about." That was not the answer he was looking for. He grabbed his tablet off the kitchen counter, and at 6'2", 240 pounds, he charged at me like a mad bull. He shoved that tablet hard into my face and yelled one last time, "I saw you." I couldn't see what he so desperately wanted me to see, but I could hear voices. I leaned back, and on the tablet, I could see it was me and Jay in my car the day before on the way to the bank. But how? I didn't know what to say. I was shocked, but he had plenty to say. He started yelling things like, "You lying whore! Do you think you're smarter than me?" He grabbed me and threw me across the room. I slid across the glass-top table and onto the floor. He stomped over, and he began kicking me with his steel-toed boots, over and over. Something inside me said, "Don't yell back, don't fight back, just keep getting up." So I kept getting up, over and over again. I hit every hard surface in that condo that night. I even managed to get up after his fists cold-clocked me right in the face, and I crumbled to the ground. I managed to get up before his steel-toed boot made contact with my face again. At 12:21 a.m., after 5 long and scary hours, they finally put handcuffs on him. That December night was a preview of what my life would look like. It would be a horror flick. That night, he had seen a text message from Jay before I got home, because in addition to those 12 hidden cameras he'd inserted into my world, he had also downloaded spyware or stalkerware onto my phone, my laptop, and my tablet. So he could remotely see, read, and even delete my messages, my voicemails, everything. He also could remotely control the device, which means he could turn on and off features like the microphone and camera and see and hear what I was doing when I had those devices around me. I tried to escape him. I moved all over the state. I stayed in safe houses. I replaced my phone and my laptop dozens of times. I even replaced my vehicles, but I couldn't get away from him. I had been clueless. The digital stalking, the physical stalking, the threats of violence, the promises of death, and the just not knowing when or what he would do next. People would tell me, he'll get bored, he'll get over it, it'll stop. But year after year, he continued and escalated and added to his torture tactics. In 2020, it had been 7 years since I'd met him, almost 7 years since that night in December. I made a final move home because I was so very, very tired. I was so tired and my body was in so much pain from constantly living in fight or flight mode. At home in March, I sat outside staring up at the night sky, and there it was, as always, its flashing lights hovering above me. That night, I didn't hide from his drone or the camera. I stared right at it. I forced a smile, and I waved at it. I was waving goodbye because he didn't know, but for me, this would be the last night. I wouldn't be there again tomorrow night. That night, I got up and I went to bed with a peace I hadn't known for years. I didn't put the loaded gun underneath my pillow that night. I didn't stay up, forcing myself to stay awake, wondering if this would be the night he'd come and get me. The next morning I got up, I went upstairs to watch the news with my mom one last time, and I had to tell her how much I loved her. But she wasn't watching her normal show. She was flipping channel to channel. On every channel was the same breaking news. It was the coronavirus. That day, a new monster had entered the scene, threatening to kill anyone and everyone. Like my stalker monster, this monster didn't care who it hurt. It didn't have any mercy. It was just about destruction. Like me, you all could run and hide, but you weren't safe. That day, I had been glued to the television, and I hadn't gone off in my car to end my life. A few weeks passed by, it flew by, before I realized his absence in my world. I stood there that morning brushing my teeth and thinking back, when was the last time I thought about him? Had it been that night with the drone? I really wanted to believe, I wanted to be happy, I wanted to share it with my family, but I just couldn't believe after all these years of mind games that it had finally ended. So I didn't share it with my family. But then this happened. It was about the beginning of April, and it was after work. My family had just gotten home from another long day of wearing masks at COVID, so all talking about that, sitting in the living room. And I don't remember for the life of me, what was said, but they were all laughing uncontrollably. My mom was making a hooting noise. My sister was snorting every so often. My son had his arms wrapped around his waist. He was laughing so hard it hurt. My daughter was squealing, "Stop, stop, I'm gonna pee my pants." Their faces were turning red. I sat there admiring them in their glee. And suddenly, a noticeable flutter was in my stomach. A cool breeze crept up in my throat and onto my tongue. My mouth opened, and out came an awkward chuckle. That chuckle became a ha-ha, and the ha-ha became a full-blown belly laugh. I was laughing so hard, within seconds, I had tears running down my cheeks. I didn't even notice that they'd all stopped, and they were just staring at me. They looked at me like parents stare at their toddler trying to take its first steps. You see, it had been years since I'd laughed out loud. They all stared at me, and I finally stopped and looked back at them. Their faces were happy. They looked somewhat relieved. And it was so weird, but it was like in that moment we all simultaneously knew that that spell had been broken, that that curse that had plagued me for so many years had finally been lifted. Had in fact those two monsters collided, had that day in March the virus defeated the stalker somehow and saved my life, I had no other explanation. That summer, Corona continued to terrorize the world. But that summer, after 7 years, I finally began to come back to life. I spent the days outside. Summer is my favorite season. And I let the sun turn my pasty gray complexion to a healthy glow. That summer, there was a happiness that filled me, and it started to melt slowly away all that pain. By 2021, I finally realized a purpose and some sort of meaning for all those years, and I founded Dating Tips by Meg to share my story and to raise awareness about dating violence and stalking and prevent this from happening to others. Everything in life we experience, the good and the bad, changes and impacts who we are and how we think about things. Those years definitely did change and impact me, but surprisingly for the better. You know the Walmart lady, the one with the flannel pajamas, the messy hair, the screaming kids going all around? Before, I stood there, a little annoyed, a little perturbed, not thinking the kindest thoughts. I wasn't exactly the Walmart lady during all those years, but I wasn't exactly a normal, put-together person. Going to the store or out in public was excruciatingly painful for me. When I finally would get there, I would continually look over my shoulder, making sure he wasn't there. By the time I would get to the cash register, I would always be crying. No one knew, probably no one cared what I was going through, but looking back, I know that was the very, very best I could do at the moment. And so maybe that's true for the Walmart lady. Maybe last night she had escaped finally, just in her pajamas. She had struggled, but she had gotten her kids into her car, the place where they'd slept. And this morning, of course, they're all cranky and tired and hungry. She's just trying to get them something to eat. Maybe she's doing the best she can too. So now, it doesn't matter who's struggling or who looks like they're having a bad day or if it's a Walmart lady. Instead of thinking those thoughts, I simply offer them a smile. It's an unspoken but universally understood gesture by all. For me, it's my way of saying, don't give up. It's going to be okay. I know it seems simple, maybe too simple, but your smile has the power and has the power to change the world. Literally change the world, or at the very least, someone's world that day. I wish everyone would join me in this, because I don't think you have to go through 7 years of hell to be a kinder person or to make this place better. So I'm going to challenge each and every one of you out there. Next time when you're going about your day, you're coming across somebody, they're struggling, they look like they're having a bad day. Remember that we don't know what the hell these people are going through, what the situation is. So take a couple seconds and smile. Choose kindness. It costs you nothing. In the face of adversity, we all have a choice. We can choose the grumpy face and to live life being sad, or we can choose to share our smile and be kind. And I hope that you all will help me, and you will believe today that in a world where monsters exist, miracles do too. Thank you.